I want to leave something for my son, just in case I die tomorrow. Look, here is the explanation of the entire universe and what you are. Enjoy what you got right now, because even in the scope of any kind of history, you last this long.
Hi guys, so today we have a very special guest, Kevin Hall, author of Fish in a Spacesuit. This book will tell you exactly why you're alive, how you're alive, and it's even gonna make you feel lucky to be alive. We are taking humanity back through first principles. So, welcome, Kevin Hall. Well, thanks for taking your time. Very interesting book, very good book.
Thank you.
Maybe we can just get started on some questions for you that I have here.
Sure, hit me with some questions. I'm here for you.
Just wondering, like, how did you come up with this idea? I mean, this is a very condensed book for such a complex topic.
How did I come up with the idea? Honestly, it's a crazy story. I hadn't been to university in a long time,
Yes.
and I was just I was kind of really digging on reading a lot of stuff and absorbing a lot of stuff, and I was kind of in this mindset of like a big history thing, right? I was thinking about all the pieces at once, and I thought to myself, you know what? They don't teach this in like middle school or high school, but they should have a class that literally is just the entire universe. Here's the history of the universe. We're not going to spend too much time on this or this or this. Instead, we're going to do the whole thing. And I thought, could you even explain that in, an appropriate amount of time? And so I was a bartender at the time in Southern Oregon. And so I would get off of my work in the middle of the night, and I'd have about a 35 minute drive home on a motorbike, right? So I had my helmet and everything. And it was a scooter for everyone in America. We say motorbike in the rest of the world, but it's a scooter. I thought to myself, all right, I bet I can do this whole thing, like literally from the Big Bang to right now in 35 minutes, if I just really put my mind to it. So I put my helmet on and I just took off, and I began at the beginning. Okay, 14 billion years ago, 13.8 billion years ago, the entire universe was something so tiny, and then exploded, and I just kept going and going, and how the particles change over time. Like the entire universe started with just hydrogen and helium. That's an atom with one proton, an atom with two protons. How in the heck did we get all this, right? So I started explaining all that chemistry and the history of stars and things like that. Oh man, I mean, I just barely scratched the surface before I got home. And I was like, all right, okay, I'm gonna have to do better. So the next day I did the exact same thing. And I caught myself sort of, teaching like too much or saying too much in one loop. I would just go, oh no, let's get on to the next thing. And I made it a little shorter. And I did this for like 2 weeks. Every single time I got off of work, I'd put on my helmet and start the lecture. And by that time, after a couple of weeks, there was a lot of words and phrases that I just sort of knew that I had packaged so that I could describe something and then get on to the next. And you know what? I never got it down to 35. I never got it down to that one 35-minute lecture. But from that idea, like over and over, I thought, I bet I could put this down. I bet I could write this. And my original idea was I want to write it in a way that my son can understand it perfectly, could just open the book. Of course, at the time he was too young, but he was 6 or something. But I was like, I want to leave something for my son, just in case I die tomorrow. Look, here is the explanation of the entire universe and what you are, So that's where the idea came from, was like, I just bet myself, I bet I could do that whole thing in a short amount of time. And
Oh, well, hey, you bet yourself and you won that bet. And now you find yourself in a very exclusive club of 3% of people who actually, finish their book from idea to actually only 3%, if maybe even less, who actually publish it, finish and publish. But how long did that take from, just coming up with the idea on that bike to actually publishing it on Amazon? Like, how long did that take?
Embarrassed to say, honestly, it took 5 years, I think, of work. Yeah.
Well, it's not easy explaining the universe.
Yeah. And at the time, I haven't been a very scheduled writer. If I could have set aside a certain time every day to do, and if I could have found myself being productive that way, then I would have done it. I would have probably had it done in a year. In fact, when I first said, all right, that's it, I'm going to write this as a book. And I just started writing on my phone. And I thought to myself, after that first day, I was like, I'll be done in 3 months, but I'll give myself 6. 5 years
Okay.
later, I'm still putting it together.
Okay. Well, you put together a very good book, and it's a very complex topic, right? Trying to explain to
Yeah.
people, hey, you are actually a little tiny speck to what you are today, like humans
Mhm.
with computers and now even AI, right? So,
Yeah.
how's your outlook, in life when you think about life in that way, because you have a deep understanding of why we're here.
Yeah, I mean, if you read the whole book, like
Mm-hmm.
beginning to end,
Yes.
then
Yes.
you'll basically see that's a good explanation of the way I see the whole world. It's so strange because, my interpersonal relationships are right here, right now. It's happening. But anytime I start thinking about bigger things,
Mm-hmm.
people get upset, especially in the United States. Excuse me. People get upset about politics, especially national politics right now. It's
Okay.
everywhere. And
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just can't do that. I have I think Pascal, who is it's an old French historian called the longue durée. The longue durée is like looking
Ooh.
at the events of history as unfocused, unzoomed, zoom out and see the whole thing. And then when you see something that's happening that someone says is very important, you kind of look at it. And in that frame
Oh.
of reference, it's really not much. And so what I've found is that sort of informs my daily like life and mood and everything as it's fine. Enjoy what you got right now. Because even in the scope of any kind of history, the history of 100 years, the history of humans, the history of the planet, the history of the universe, any kind of history, you last this long. I'm going to
Oh,
last this long.
that's so
So
true.
enjoy it, man. It's here for you. Just grab it. That's kind of, I've always said yes to stuff.
Because the book starts, I think, literally 13.8 billion years ago when you start to
Oh, actually,
explain
actually, I wrote in the book 5 trillion days ago. So it's about
5 trillion
13.8 billion
days.
years ago.
Okay.
And then I did the math and
Okay.
it's about 5 trillion
Okay.
days. Yeah.
Really
I
true.
should tell you, there's so many things that didn't make it into the book. There's one thing that I'm still glad I took it out, that I edited out at the
Okay.
beginning of uh, the book. I really, from the beginning, planned to have this number trick. It's not really a trick, it's just sort of a number explanation
Mhm.
that I like to do. So I'm going to pull out my calculator here. Okay.
Okay.
Now I'm going to pull out my calculator and we are going to do a little fun stuff. So this is what
Okay.
I,
Cool.
I really, I had it written in the book, but I ended up taking it out because it was too long and I
Okay.
could live without it. But let's talk about these giant numbers, right? We say how long is 5 trillion days, 13.8, 14 billion years. The Earth has been around for 4 billion years. Like, how big is that? The problem is our brains are meant to handle tigers and trees, not meant to handle galaxies and atoms. Like, we can't really get there. Our brain doesn't do that. And so we
Mm-hmm.
kind of use language and numbers to sort of, help us get there. But let's do a little number thing. How long is 1 minute?
60 seconds.
60 seconds. So let's
Okay.
take the second. We can feel a second. Like literally, our brain can understand a second. It's the amount of time from here to here.
Okay.
That's it. So we can count 1, 2, 3. And if we go to 60, we will spend 1 minute counting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what about 100 seconds? 120 seconds is 2 minutes. So we can feel that 1, 2, 3, 4. We can go to 120. What about 1,000 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think? Just take a guess. How long is 1,000 seconds?
1,000 seconds. 20 minutes.
Okay.
Wait, that's a bad guess. Wait, how long is 1,000 seconds? Wait,
Okay,
60
1,000 seconds
times.
divided by 60,
Uh-huh.
right? That's how many minutes? 16 minutes,
Oh,
16.6.
I was pretty close. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So if you count to 1,000, you're going to be here for 16 seconds, almost 17 or 16 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Almost
16 minutes.
17
Yeah.
minutes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So from 1,000, let's just go up one step. How about a million? What is 1 million seconds?
A million seconds.
Yeah.
2,000 minutes.
Okay,
Maybe.
that's not bad.
What's
How many
that?
days? Just take a guess.
I
It's
might be
going to be
wrong.
days.
Oh, okay. Uh, 30 days.
Okay.
I'm so bad at mental math right now.
No, that's all right.
Okay. Is it 30 days?
No, it's 694 days.
That's 2 years.
Yeah, so check it out. So let's
A
do
million minutes
1
is 2
million
years. Holy shit. Holy shoot.
divided by 60. That's a million seconds equals 16,666 minutes. Okay, divided by 24 minutes in an hour, 694 days. That's 2 years. We just went from 1,000 to a million. That doesn't seem like a big jump, and yet
No.
we go from less than 20 minutes all the way to 2 years.
2 years.
So what about a billion? What do you think? Take a guess. How long is a billion seconds?
Okay.
1, 2, 3. Never stop.
Times 1,000, 2,000 years. No.
30. No, that's a trillion. Sorry. It's 31 years.
Oh.
31 and change. A billion. But wait a minute. The word million and the word billion sound exactly the same. And they're really easy to say. It's easy to say a billion. But to actually understand how huge that is, that's astounding, right? So you go up to a trillion, right? Also, another one that's easy to say. That's 30,000 years, man. Cavemen, a trillion seconds ago, cavemen were painting the inside of caves. So that was one thing I kind of wanted to put right at the beginning of the book to say, all right, just so you know, we're going to be dealing with these enormous numbers, right? Amount of particles, probabilities, amount of time, but in the end, I said, we can do without that. We don't need that 3 minutes worth of reading to get there. It ended up having to be trimmed.
Oh, well, that was a pretty cool exercise, actually. That's actually a pretty cool exercise to go through, right?
Yeah, to realize that these words we say so easily actually represent almost unfathomable amounts of whatever it is.
And this book is derived from your time studying anthropology, because I just realized this is a very, very well condensed, almost like an anthropology book, if you think about it.
Yeah, part of it, for sure, parts of it is. And a lot of it is from my studies in anthropology, prehistory, and history, world history. World history always fascinated me because whenever you study history, whatever country you're in, that's the history you study, right? If you're in England, then you're studying, I don't know, my son studies English history, but the great kings of the past and the great battles of Norman, and in the United States, if I say, I study history, they're like, oh man, the Civil War and all that. And I'm like, nah, that actually kind of European and North American history.
Okay.
But I think just because it was so familiar, kind of bored me. So what I found was, if you study like the activities of all the humans, of all the time humans have been here, it's really interesting to see different places, different populations doing different things. It's really cool. Yeah.
What kind of history did you study then? Were you interested in, if not American ones? Like, did you?
No, it was world history with a focus on East Asia.
East Asia?
China, Korea, Japan, and mostly China. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So a lot of Asian history.
Yes. I found Asian history, especially Chinese history, to be really fascinating.
Okay. Compared to like Western history?
Yeah, for me.
Okay.
Like if I was an alien and I didn't know any of these cultures, I don't know what kind of history would be more fascinating. But for me, growing up in the West and having all that be kind of obvious, for me, studying Chinese history, I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Did they really do that? And was that really like that? It was really, cool. I had a brilliant professor for years, Dr. Zhang Tian. He was from Beijing, and he was amazing. Yeah.
You had a Chinese professor teach you Chinese history?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man. Oh, well, what about Chinese history? Like, it really interests you. Do you remember any of it?
Yeah. There was a time 2,000 years ago, 202 BC, I want to say, where there was these warring states, right? Each one was kind of its own community, its own nation. It was its own kingdom. Everybody had a king, just like we did in Europe. Well, there was a man named Qin Shi Huangdi, and he was what they now call the Golden Emperor, or the Yellow Emperor, excuse me. And
based on skin color.
So, yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
I don't mean that. No, he was the king of the Qin kingdom, and he said, you know what? I'm going to conquer all the rest and make the whole thing mine, right? So when he did, and he really spent a whole lifetime in what we call the unification wars now, really uniting all of China, right? But even then, it wasn't like a country. It was a bunch of different kingdoms that all owed their allegiance to this one guy, right? And that is an empire. You get, a bunch of villages together that worship one guy, that's a kingdom. You get a bunch of kingdoms together, and that's an empire.
Yeah.
And so he built the first empire in China, and it's
Mhm.
been enduring. It has lasted. I mean, it's been like civil war after civil war, farmers' rebellions, a lot of times they'll say, especially in the South. But yeah, over centuries, millennia, it has endured. So now we have China, which
Oh.
of course they don't call China. They call it Zhongguo, which is the middle kingdom, basically, the center
Oh,
of
is that how they got the name?
Yep.
Oh,
Zhongguo.
see, that's really cool when you explain these empire stuff, and then I tie it back to the book. How even that whole thing, like a whole dynasty, is nothing but a speck in like the grand scheme of things, right?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I just give you,
Ozymandias.
yeah, I'll just give you an example. Maybe I'll just tell the viewers like
Please.
why I feel so lucky to be alive after reading your book. It's because it shows you like, okay, so 13.8 billion years ago, you were just a speck, right, floating around in space, and you floated around in that space for 8 billion years before you finally settled on a rock that had water. There were like billions of rocks floating all around you. You settled on the one with water, and then you managed to find yourself inside that water. You managed to
At
find
a
yourself
hydrothermal vent.
inside that, and then that's where you discovered enzymes, right? They
Yeah.
just happen to be enzymes in these waters floating like billions of
Okay.
years in the space.
So there's a bit of a trick in that book. I don't know if
Okay.
you've ever heard of the Origins Project. Now, the idea
No.
is,
Yes. What's the
we
Origins
as a
Project?
species, we're pretty sure that life on Earth, right? Every living thing, it all has cells. It's all made of molecules that do work and stuff like that's literally the definition of life.
Yes.
And we're pretty sure that all life on Earth actually started on Earth from biological processes. Inert molecules that are not alive came together and started forming chemical patterns that would replicate its own chemical pattern, and that created life. The problem is we've got this little gap in our knowledge where we don't know where the first cell came from. It had to be a cell, right? All life is cells, but there's some really good guesses, and I really thought about putting that in the book, like and I wrote a bunch, oh my god, on this, like there's some people who think it's clay that created that first cell.
Clay?
But you have to have these phospholipids creating these empty vesicles for these chemical processes to happen to create this. We don't know how that happened. So if you read that part in the book, you're down there, you're a molecule, you're at the hydrothermal vent. So some other molecules bond to you, and they kind of break and then bond and break.
That's
and
right.
then you feel cool. You're like, oh, I'm beautiful. Look how awesome I am. And then there's a moment where you look up and realize there's an enormous giant blob coming at you. And I think I used the line, that's when you realize you and your friends were behind the times. And so I just introduce a cell already done. So I don't actually address, and it took months to really figure out what I wanted to do with this, but I don't address how did the cells form, because you know what? We don't know. We got some good guesses, but I decided instead of introducing those guesses, because I didn't want anything in the book that wasn't absolutely true. There's nothing in there is contentious. That was rule number one. There's nothing that like, oh, we're still wondering. No. If it's in there, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
so
that's the
I
cool
just
part.
sort of introduce a cell. There it is. Don't know how. And I skip over it.
Okay, we don't know how the cell got there, but we found it floating around space. We found it somehow.
We actually have fossils of cells in the what is that called? The something chert. I want to say northern Australia. We have fossils of colonies of cells that are like 3.8 billion years old.
No,
right? So the Earth cooled about 4 billion years ago.
Okay.
Right? And it was almost as soon as the Earth could support life, it was cool enough that it wasn't like burning all the molecules up, we find evidence that life formed really, really early. So we're pretty sure as a species, as a species that studies, we're pretty sure life is a natural occurrence in the universe. Given the right conditions at the right time, it will just happen. It happens spontaneously. And that's one of the things I decided not to harp on, because, where I come from in the United States, there's a lot of, argument about that. But yeah, I mean, scientists are really sure, the scientific community knows that life can arise spontaneously. Yuri Miller experiments proved that.
What experiment?
The Yuri Miller experiments. A guy named Stanley Miller in something Yuri's lab, I can't remember. He said, I'm going to try to put in inert molecules into a condition, and and see if they will assemble into biological molecules.
Did they?
And everybody's like, all right, give it a try. So he tried everything. And it just wouldn't work until he said, you know what? I bet there was some energy in there. And that's, of course, now we know it was most probably hydrothermal vents in the bottom of a shallow sea. Anyway.
Okay.
And so he introduced a little electricity into his environment, and molecules began to self-assemble into biological molecules. That chemistry worked. And so he's proved that life can arise. Yeah.
Sorry. So he put a bunch of inert molecules,
Yeah. The
into
stuff
a
that
thing.
you and I would do. So monomers, basic molecules, of course, a lot of water, and
Basically.
basic list: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. We're all made from those four things. Plus, as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, plus the fifth element that we're all made of, which is his favorite, other. So carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and other.
That's very cool.
He didn't create life, actually, because life comes in cells. And that's the one thing we haven't been able to do. We haven't been able to really create a cell. But the Urey Miller experiments is what it's called. Stanley Miller used Urey's laboratory. He said, hey, man, I got this idea. I want to do this. Urey said, okay. And so his name is on the work.
Nice guy.
So in the end, basically, he ended up able to throw in inert molecules, molecules from stuff that's not alive and have never been alive, right? Molecules from like rocks and sand and stuff, not molecules from dead leaves and stuff, right? And so he threw in a bunch of inert molecules, and given the right conditions and the right amount of time, it created biological molecules. Those things, just due to chemistry, this has this property, this has this property. Oh, it doesn't work, but this one has a property that it does, and it links. And then you link a couple of them in a row, and in the water, different parts of that more complex structure now like repel water or attract water, and so they begin to fold or flap and move, and then you end up with these really complex biomolecules, biological molecules, but no living cells, right? We can't seem to make a living cell self-assemble. I think that it seems like that's a 1 in a 100 billion, 1 in a trillion chance, but we can take phospholipids, right? So if you take phospholipids, which is what your cells are made of, animal cells, the cell membrane, the cell membrane is made of phospholipids, right? Keeps the outside out and the inside in. If you take these phospholipids and drop them in water of the right solution, like a saline solution, whatever, at the right temperature, they literally will line up and self-assemble and make like empty, what we call vesicles. But we can't seem to make a living cell.
But when you say he found like biological properties, isn't that a living cell? Something biological is
No,
living?
not necessarily. Okay, so if you took a living cell from you right now, just took it off your skin, right, and put it under a microscope and pulled out pieces of that from the inside, you would find these very complex molecules like proteins and enzymes and stuff that can't possibly occur naturally. Like literally, they have to, be assembled. In fact, in your cell, they are being assembled all the time by different enzymes and stuff. So you can't start with like an empty cell and then hope it works. That's been the whole point of the Origins project, the idea of like, where did it all come from? Because we all came from one thing. It takes life to make life, you see? And so if you took a piece of a living cell out, you would find molecules that themselves are not alive, but they couldn't possibly exist without life. Those are biological molecules. We call them biomolecules. So real complex stuff that you only find in living cells began to self-assemble in this condition.
So the Origins project is something that's still ongoing. They're still actively trying
it's people all over and it's not like a big thing. It's like, we have to figure this out. It's just an ongoing thing for a group of researchers from everything from geologists to obviously biologists to historians. Everybody's kind of researching this and trying to sort of posit ideas of like, where do you think the first cell even came from? How did it grow? I mean, we know so much all the way back to that, but we don't have that, which is kind of interesting.
Wow, that is so cool. So what would happen if someone figured it out, if they found out?
I don't think anything would happen. I mean, it would just be awesome that we kind of found out like, oh man, now we ran this experiment and then we realized that in these conditions at this time, whatever, with these particular molecules and this kind of energy flow, a cell will actually assemble. The real difficult problem is everything is made by using instructions, DNA and RNA, but RNA and DNA cannot be constructed without help. And so you have to have an enzyme to do any of that work. but you
Yeah.
can't get an enzyme without the instructions. So you
Mhm.
have to have DNA or RNA to make the enzyme, but you have to have the enzyme to make the DNA and RNA. It's a chicken and an egg situation,
Oh, like a real
right?
life chicken and egg
Yeah, it's
situation.
like which came first?
Oh,
And so the going theory right now, or at least I think the most popular theory, the
okay.
last time I was reading up on it, is what we call the RNA world. So
Okay.
RNA, I don't know if I explained it really well in the book.
Briefly,
That's
I
one
think
of
you
my
explained briefly.
greatest regrets is I couldn't make DNA interesting enough to fit in the book. Every time I tried, it just kind of got boring and long. But it's
Okay.
one of the most interesting things in the whole universe, the way DNA works.
Okay,
But
how does
anyway,
that work?
so DNA is that double helix,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's that ladder. It's a twisted ladder. Well,
Yes.
imagine untwisting that ladder, right? And so you just have this ladder. Each rung is made from two different monomers. A monomer is a basic molecule that comes together to make polymers. Poly, many, mono, one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So each rung is actually a monomer. And all of life we have ever seen, every single, without a single exception, is made from 4 different monomers, and that's it. The whole DNA thing is made from adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. So we just think A, T, G, and C, right?
ATG
A
and
and
C.
T fit together. G and C fit together. But
Mm-hmm.
A can't fit G or C, and T can't fit G or C, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you tear it down the middle like a zipper, you unzip it, you've got half of the DNA molecule here and half of it here. And if you read ATGC, then you know the other half is
Mm-hmm.
TC AT, no, AT. You know what the base pair is, so it'll be
Mm-hmm.
TACG.
Okay.
You know it. You can only look at half of it, but you know exactly what the other half is.
Oh,
That's
very
the
cool.
code. That's the awesome part. And so RNA is a way to, you open this up, and then there's an enzyme called RNA polymerase.
Mm-hmm.
And it hooks up here, and it builds the other half of the chain, tears it off, and then goes somewhere with it. It's like making a copy of the blueprint, right?
Mm-hmm.
Blueprints for a big church or an awesome building. That's all downtown. You want those blueprints. You're not taking the original. You're going to make a copy and take it with you. That's what RNA is.
Mm-hmm.
So you split it open, and then you build the complements, A, T, G, and C, along a little backbone, take it off, and then you can re-zip the original DNA back, and you've got a little copy right here of this little thing. Take that down to the endoplasmic reticulum or the mitochondria, and that's the instructions to make a protein, right? So that RNA is basically the information. It's half of a DNA molecule. So imagine that RNA begins to self-assemble, right, in this soup, in this primordial soup. There's never been a living molecule or a living cell, and it begins to self-assemble, right? And then what happens when it gets long and long and long, and it folds in on itself? Suddenly you've got a DNA molecule, and that's kind of the running theory that's most probably what happened. That's called the RNA world theory.
But that's
I'm
really
lecturing
cool.
again. I'm sorry.
No, that's really cool. I was gonna bring this up actually, but you just explained it so perfectly. Because in the book, you know how you're the main character, like you are the main character, and the way you interact with this DNA RNA in the book is really interesting. So I remember like you're just floating there, you just find yourself in this primordial soup, right? And then suddenly this guy comes along and then starts like taking you apart, making copies of you, and you're like, what are you doing? And then you're explaining like, I'm just making copies of you so I can go and build stuff. And like, I'm just here to build stuff. He's got this one function, but you don't know who put it there. Like, why is it there? You just happen to find yourself in this environment, right?
Yeah. But there's so much, and just because we don't know something doesn't mean it's unknowable. Doesn't mean it. There has to be physical, physical causes for the physical effects we see, and so so we just don't know how that happened. So in the book, I decided to just skip it. I'm like, I don't know. There you just have a big cell, and you end up in the cell. And believe it or not, the Earth formed, and like there were little living single-celled organisms that would sometimes come together in colonies and everything for like 3 billion years until finally some of these colonies start, as I illustrate in the book. Sometimes these colonies would form like the outer cells would form like a shell. Some of the inner cells would take special shape to bring in nutrients and oxygen and everything into, or not oxygen at the time, but nutrients into the inside of the colony, which is still individual cells, but they're beginning to specialize. So we're beginning to see the beginning of the the start of complex organisms,
Mhm.
organisms that are made from more than one cell. On all those cells, those groups of cells are beginning to coordinate different efforts to create an organism,
The
multi-celled organism.
the
Yeah.
spacesuit, basically.
Well, the spacesuit is I called it the spacesuit because when you crawl out of, when I say, and there's fish and flatworms and jellies and there's all kinds of great stuff in the ocean, but there's literally nothing alive on land, right? And so what does life do? Life
Yeah.
continues to diversify and create and adapt to new environments. Too much life here, we'll move out here. And like I explained in the book, take a cold weather beast that moves into a hot climate and it dies before it can have kids. But then another one does it and another one until one of them has the right traits to live just long enough to have kids. And then their kids will be a little more adapted to that. So slowly but surely, life can't help it but take over the earth. And so the dry land was one of those environments. And so I described, what do you need to get a fish inland, right?
Yeah.
Just like taking a human and going out into space. There's nothing up there, man, right? So what do we do?
Oh, that's
we
true.
Make a spacesuit. So our astronauts are in a spacesuit with air and pressure and moisture and heat or cold, whatever we need. We bring our environment with us, and that's what life had to do. Complex life had to do to begin living on dry land.
That's
the water's
great.
the water's great. It takes care of you. As soon as you get out into dry air, you're like, yeah.
Yeah. Explain fish in a spacesuit. Why do you think we wanted to leave the water and go up to land? Because we couldn't even use oxygen at the time, if I remember the book correctly.
That's right. Yeah.
That's why. Yes.
It's an odd phrasing to that question, right? Why did we want to? Want isn't a thing. Want is a brand new idea in life, and so like I said, life just can't help but investigate new environments, even new environments that kill us. We can't help it. We just keep doing it. Oh, he died. Let me try, and that's all of life does that, and that's, in fact, that's one of the greatest mechanisms of natural selection, of all life throughout history and everything. The selection part is the death. But but slowly but surely people started doing it, or not people, excuse me, fish started doing it, getting a little closer and closer. And so you'd end up really, I'm describing it in very simple terms, but really what's happening is you end up with a fish that just lives in very, very shallow, warm water. Right. And so shallow, warm water, but there's some algae growing up there. And so the fish starts using its fins to push through the mud out of the shallow, and there's a little water, but it's really muddy, but I can eat this delicious algae and then slide back in. Right.
Okay.
And every generation, there's some fish that go a little farther and then slide back in a little farther. And so the ones, and the way we pass on genes in complex organisms that have sex, right? If it's a single sex organism, then it just splits, and this one is exactly like this one. They're all clones. But because we have male and female organisms now, we mix our genes. I'm like this. Well, our kids are going to be half and half, right? A different mix. And so every generation, there's going to be a couple that have a fin that's kind of better at scooping the sand, right? Maybe not as good at paddling through the water, but a little better at scooping the sand. So he's going to be better at doing that. A little better at holding its breath, right? Or by breath, I mean holding water in its gills so it can stay longer to get that delicious algae or whatnot, right? And so every generation is a little more like that and a little more like that until you end up with a population. This takes enormous amounts of time, but you end up with a population of fish that, kind of live half and half. They live in the mud and they can kind of, dip their gills into the wet stuff and get some, and little traits begin to evolve differently than their cousins that stayed in the water, in the shallow water.
Okay.
That's how populations diverge. Yeah.
And then over time, you just develop this spacesuit with feet and hands and eyes.
Yeah. Skin that can keep your moisture in, eyes that can operate outside of the water, which is crazy, right? And you take that and I buzz through. There's a point in the book where I just buzz through and I'm like, okay, now we understand the mechanisms, how this works. Well, these fish became this, and this became this, and this, and I sort of just say, okay, and then we have this wonderful, populated world on land too.
So
and then
that
we get into the dinosaurs. Yeah.
So that took 3 billion years from fish to becoming, like, I guess, primates
from the first single-celled organism
in the water.
Right, to
Right,
what we
right.
call the Cambrian explosion. Oh my God.
Oh,
I might
Cambrian
be,
explosion.
I'm misspeaking. I'm not going to talk about the Cambrian explosion because I don't know when that was. That's not my,
But what is it? What is it?
that's not my expertise. But anyway,
Okay.
so to create um, uh, complex organisms
Hmm.
from single cells floated around one at a time,
Yeah.
just replicating themselves one at a
Hmm.
time for 3 billion years before we even end up with fish and worms and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we're on land, and once we get on land, now we have to survive dinosaurs for another hundreds of millions of years.
But I made a distinction in the book with my language, talking
Hmm.
about dinosaurs here and
Yes.
then our lineage here.
Okay.
So when I start saying you're never a dinosaur.
No. Yes.
Now I'm not sure whether that was a mistake, not like a mistake, but whether I regret doing that and not including dinosaurs in our lineage.
Hmm.
But I really wanted to, just for the sake of expedience, I wanted to talk about where the mammals came from, because I know readers are looking forward to this. Man, you've been a particle so long, and then
Yeah.
right,
Mhm.
and it's like we're ready to be furry and have
Correct.
fun. So right, I took our proto species, oh my gosh, I don't even know the name. I really don't even know the name of this species, but it's like the earliest known mammal species, just a little tree shrew, basically a little
Tree
tree
shrew.
shrew with like fur, right?
Yeah.
And we were I say we, but this earliest known mammal was we were omnivores. Omnivores to the
Omnivores.
core, I think I say in the book. And so whatever it is, we'll eat some moss, no problem, man. We can digest that and turn that into energy. Sure. Worms, got it, love it. Bugs, yep, love that too. Some different kinds of vegetation, sure. We can eat anything, right? We were omnivores, we're scroungers, but we were small and we were definitely food. We were food for the bigger things. They loved to eat us, and so
Yeah.
we were kind of kept. And that was the narrative I got for that part of the book. I was like, oh, we're being oppressed
Mm.
by the dinosaurs, right?
Yeah.
Until the asteroid hits, and then it's like,
Oh. Well. See, that's the thing. So after surviving all that in the water and then coming out, and then we just happened to pick the cells that made us mammals, right? Basically, we became mammals.
kind of. Think of it this way: there is no overarching intelligence to evolution. Literally, there's nothing choosing. There's no choices.
Yes.
So
No
think of it
choices.
this way: let's just say you have an organism. Doesn't matter what it is, where it is, and it has a bunch of babies. So whatever its genetic code is, and maybe the genetic code of the pair, mated pair, right? Look at all the genes, and then if you could write out every single potential characteristic that could be, like, imagine it all happens, right? Every single potential characteristic happens, and it's all going to be a version of this particular species, of this particular organism, right? And it all happens. Well, some of it is going to be stupid. It's not going to work. And so they get eaten before they can have kids and pass on that particular genetic code. Some of it is going to be awesome. Better eyesight, better sense of smell, sharper claws, whatever it is, right? So that those examples of offspring of this organism that has had offspring that can do all of it, right? Everything that it can potentially do. Some of them are actually going to be more successful. They will be able to have kids. Their kids will have the traits of their parents. Those happen to be the traits that are more successful. Therefore, more successful traits tend over generations, many generations, more successful traits tend to pass on.
Yeah.
Less successful traits tend to die out because they're not successful. I don't know how to get food. My claws are too short. I can't get it, right?
Okay.
I can't hunt. I'm slow, whatever it is. So I'm going to die before I have kids.
Oh.
Anybody who doesn't die, anybody who lives long enough to have kids and pass on those traits, that's what we call biological success or evolutionary success. That is a success. So you've done it. You've passed it on. Now it's up to them to be successful enough to pass on those traits.
Right.
And remember, every generation, those traits are changing a little bit here and there. And we're trying everything and just cutting the things that don't work. That's what evolution is. There's no choices at work at all. Nobody thinks and hopes and wants and chooses at all. It just happens. It don't work. That's what evolution is. There's no choices at work at all. Nobody thinks and hopes and wants and chooses at all. It just happens.
Is that what you mean by probabilistic?
Maybe. When did I use probabilistic?
Evolution is more probabilistic than another
Yes.
term that you used.
Yeah, and I think oh man, I've written so many essays on this, but I think I used an example of a big, what is it, mastodon or a mammoth, right? The biggest, strongest mammoth is bound to survive and have
Mhm.
kids because they're the biggest, strongest mammoth. But what if they fall off a cliff accidentally due to no fault of their own before they
Mhm.
have kids?
Mhm.
Then all those very successful genes, that very successful lineage is gone, and we're
Mhm.
just going to have to make do with what, the kids that come from the rest of that population. And so it is probabilistic. Over time, different traits come out in different organisms.
Mhm.
However, accidents happen, and sometimes
Mhm.
we're pretty sure humans came from a really small genetic bottleneck. A
Mhm.
population of 2,000 or less created our modern species.
Wow, 2000 or less.
Yeah, because it's like
Oh.
huge population, everything's going, and then there's a volcano, and
Mhm.
only a few survive or
Okay.
whatever.
See, you
Cool.
explain it. You explain it so well, and what you just explained is exactly why I say when I read your book the second time, I felt lucky because, like, through all that, surviving the dinosaurs, surviving being dumb, surviving just being a bad gene,
Right,
right, to what we are today, for like hundreds of millions of years. Like, what are
right.
the chances? Just what are the chances, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you look at who you are
Mm-hmm.
right now, and
Mm-hmm.
then you can go back layer by layer and say, man, I'm glad I'm alive today. I could have died in a motorbike accident yesterday. I could have died in childhood, but I didn't,
Could
right? I
have.
could have
Yeah.
never been born. What if my parents, right? So you look at the
Exactly.
particular unique pattern of matter that you are,
I
and it's kind of
know.
cool.
Like imagine during the big explosion, I floated the other way, the opposite way, away from the rock with the
Right?
water. I could have
You'd be
floated in any direction,
billions of light years away from here.
right? Like literally billions of light years away from here. And actually, this is a good segue talking about evolution to the last part of the book where we have now civilization, and now we're talking about energy profit, right? That's how
Yeah.
you
Remember,
evolve.
there's a part in the book when it's like we're talking about animals, traits,
Mm-hmm.
populations, statistical, like, how does it work that over time these things happen and these things don't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and everything diversified, and then I'm like, okay, and you find yourself in a family. This
Yes.
little hairy family that's walking
Yeah.
around, right? And there's no such thing as a home or a structure or clothes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're just a little kind of a band of animals. And then I
Mm-hmm.
go through that scene where Long Neck Sister comes and she says, big hill. And you're like, big hill. I've never heard that. That word never existed before, but she made a sound and everybody knows what that means.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, like I said, the language is actually rather rich here. Every sentence gives you something. It tells you some clues about
Yes.
how
Yes.
this world is.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a scene trying to describe how early language happened and how that's different than a call, a bird call, monkey call, things like that. A
Mm-hmm.
call can say one thing. Like imagine if you had a whole vocabulary of 3 words,
Mm-hmm.
right? Danger, I'm hungry, I want to mate. That's it. You go ba 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 or dee 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 or bow bow, right?
Yeah.
So you make these calls and we go, oh, what a complex language, 3 whole words. Wow. But then you have this species that kind of comes out of, I want to say comes out of nowhere, but it
Mm-hmm.
actually comes out of, the plains of Africa.
Yeah.
That has more than just calls. They have information built into the sound. Think of the sounds we're making right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how complex is that? And there's parts of your brain that developed over evolutionary periods to interpret these sounds I'm making right now and make images and thoughts and ideas.
That's right.
And
That's
then
right.
there's another part, the Wernicke's area. Anyway, that takes the thoughts and ideas you have and translates them into sounds.
Mm-hmm.
This is an incredibly complex thing. But then suddenly we are all networked. Like computers, you have one computer, you can only do whatever your computer can do. You
Mm-hmm.
hook that baby up to the internet and you have an enormous network and you can use that whole network. Now I get to that when we're talking about the village and the big
Yes.
man,
Yes.
right?
That's
The big
right.
man, because they have decisions to make.
Yeah.
And then, after that scene, then the narrator says, that keeps going, right?
Mm-hmm.
More brains, right? 2 heads are better than one, and a whole village of heads is better than even
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And so that's where civilization came from. The fact
Yeah.
that we could use our mouths
Mm-hmm.
to be more than just one brain. It's more
Yeah.
than just one brain working here, man. We
Mm-hmm.
spend our whole lives interacting with others, and that makes everybody smarter, more inventive. Yeah.
That's so true. Because after a couple of 100 million years, when we started to have civilization, and that's when the first decision I think we started making, where we had to choose ourselves over our environment. I remember at one point
Yep.
they had to choose, okay, do we want to make more food and burn trees? But we don't want to burn trees. But then now we're like, okay, but do you want to survive? And then so you want to
Right.
survive,
And
so
in
now
that,
you have to start sacrificing stuff.
and that was a wonderful scene about all these things. But if
Mm-hmm.
you'll remember, there was a moment where, you know, look, we need more food. We have more people than we've ever had. We don't have enough food for everybody. Slowly
Yes,
but
yes.
surely, it's getting too much. Do we want to tear up the berry bushes that
Mm-hmm.
have always been there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it won't give us much land for our roots anyway. Or do you want to burn down the forest and we'll have so much more room? And there's no good land aside from that. What did I say? Half a day's walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so here's this village, this little village of a kinship group, right? Trying to decide, oh my God, what are we going to do? And some of the villages are like, let's just burn the forest and then we'll have places to put our roots and we'll have more roots every year.
Mm-hmm.
And some villages are aghast. They're like, oh my God, you can't burn the trees. What if the trees take revenge on us?
Yeah.
That is actually a bit of an illusion, not an illusion, but an illusion. I'm alluding to
Mm-hmm.
this time in our really smart ambling ape experience when for most of human history, humans have always believed there's little bits of magic everywhere you go, everywhere. The trees are alive. We know them, they grow and everything. So we kind of feel like there's magic there. There may be little pixie fairies or something. It's not powerful enough, not grand wizards, but there's magic all around you. And there's never been a reason not to believe that until we invented the scientific method, right? Or something akin.
Yes.
And so, yes, back then, there was a lot of magical thinking. And they were like, what if the trees take revenge on us? I don't explain at all what that even means. It's just a mode of thought I was trying to convey to the reader, that, hey, these people really see the world in this way.
Yeah. When I read that part, I was like, oh, well, that would be how they would think at the time, because they didn't know how trees grow,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then so we move on from that to then developing like real relationships, right? Having a best friend.
Well, actually, I want to talk about the part where we invent writing.
Oh, okay.
Right, and that's that scene I wrote with the guy that you're a person in a city, right? And I go through and describe, you get up in the morning, you walk out of your house in the morning,
Yes.
and you're trying to say hi to your neighbor, but she's busy wrestling a pig in her garden with her son. There's somebody on a roof hanging clothes. This is another one of those scenes where what I'm trying to do is tell you how people actually lived back then. These are not good guesses. These are actually real. We know how this worked, right? And so when you're looking around, you're seeing palm trees and small temples and palaces and neighborhoods, and you can see the city wall, and in the middle of the city is a grand temple, right? And I took some time at that point in the story, because I was lucky enough to have picked, I mean, I chose a narrative that actually had a chronology. It begins here and ends here. So I didn't have to like invent what happened next. It all, I'm just telling, the real thing. So even in these fiction moments. And so I poured through ancient maps of the earliest cities in the world. And I thought, all right, let me put it here. And I won't say it's here, Jericho or, or
Jericho.
whatever.
Okay.
But in the end, I actually decided not to. And I was going to pick one thing, but instead, the description of the place, the city that, this person that you live in, as you're going to, go and invent your writing, was just a mishmash of descriptions of cities at that time, some of the first cities in the world.
We have agriculture is because of something that happened billions of years ago, when it started to cool, but then the center of the earth never is still a molten rock. You mentioned this.
Yes, you're talking about the oxygen holocaust, which I didn't really want to talk about too much in the book.
What's the oxygen holocaust?
Well, I mean, okay, imagine that period. There was just nothing but single-celled organisms floating around in this, in the ocean, right? And that was the only life. Well, the single-celled organisms used chemistry, little chemicals, to derive our energy to do the cellular processes we needed. Life needs energy, right? You got to eat. If you didn't eat, you would die. You need that energy, right? Well, Then there came the first chloroplasts, which is to say something akin to cyanobacteria, but it's actually a I can't remember the name of it. But so you have these single-celled organisms that can float near the top of the ocean that learn how somehow to take the sun's energy and turn that into the energy it takes to make carbohydrates. You got the CO2, right, in the air, carbon dioxide, and you've got the H2O, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you take the hydrogen from there and the carbon from there, and you've got a carbohydrate. And you put that together. And so what's left over is basically just oxygen. Now, the problem with that is, at the time, oxygen is actually really reactive, right?
Okay.
Oxygen molecules, if you put O1, which is an oxygen atom, together, you make O2, do it again, you make O3, which is what? Carbon. Anyway, and so it's actually can be really, it's very reactive. And so none of the life forms on Earth could handle it. It was just too much oxygen. It was bad for them. It was like a poison. Except for this little group of, of organisms that were creating all this oxygen using sunlight, and of course, probably some other. And so a lot of the single-celled organisms in the world died off in like a couple of thousand years, couple of million years, just because there was every year there was more and more and more and more oxygen all over in the water, in the air, right? And that oxygen was not good for them. But because of that, after that period, then everything on Earth that developed was like oxygen. And so then now we have the things we see. You can't live without oxygen, right? That wasn't always true. There were things alive on Earth that couldn't live with oxygen. Now, the only thing that's alive on Earth has to have oxygen. The Earth didn't used to just be the Earth. It used to be just like a bunch of rubble around the sun. Everything's just swirling, right?
Yeah.
And but remember I talked about gravity. Gravity is every single piece of matter in the universe is being pulled toward every single piece of matter in the universe all at once. Like really, no matter what it is, there are no exceptions. That's really happening. But the closer you get, the more pull, right? So as these things are spinning around the sun at astronomical scales, when they pass by each other, they affect each other. And so slowly but surely, you end up getting these big masses swirling, at different distances around. And anything that's in that same distance, an orbit, right? A distance from the sun is one orbit, right? Anything that's in that same orbit is going to end up over hundreds of millions of years crashing into each other. But when they crash into each other, they're still nearby, and so they end up coalescing. And so planets actually came from a bunch of like matter, just asteroids and stuff, that just smash into each other over and over and over until slowly but surely we end up with these 8 planets. Now imagine that's called the period of heavy bombardment. The period of light bombardment is toward the end of that, we had a planet. Hey, look at this. It's a planet. It's big enough to crush itself in and become round, right? It's got a molten core. Everything's happening, but there's still some stuff around in that orbit. And every couple of, years or every million years or so, you're going to hit it and it's going to screw everything up again. And then finally, now after that period, the planet itself had astronomers say cleared their orbits. So there's nothing left out there to bump into, because we bumped into literally all of it. And now it's part of the planet. That's when the Earth cooled. The surface of the Earth could cool because it wasn't being so pummeled so violently. The surface of the Earth could cool. Suddenly we had water, we had rain, and that's when we get life.
Oh, you mentioned a little bit about the Pyramid of Giza. Like, I know it's just one sentence, but what do you think happened there?
Oh man, I'm gonna say the most probable, and I mean like literally, if somehow we could just find out right now, actually, this is actually what happened. Most probably, it's gonna be, wage workers, doing heavy labor. Literally, just get the blocks, put them up. The way we think it happened is probably the way it happened. There's an interesting theory I ran into, and I never really vetted it too much. I never really looked into it, but it caught my eye, or my ear rather. I was reading, and it was the blocks. Somebody said there was some chemist or a geochemist that said the blocks that are used in one of the pyramids, I don't remember which one specifically, could have been poured. Right? They could have made the rock into a slurry of some sort, poured it into a mold, and then let it set like limestone. Now, I don't know. I haven't heard much about that since then, but all I'm saying is there are other theories. Nobody knows.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Right. And so, but it seems to me like if I heard that theory years ago, I would have heard it more often if there was some merit
Mm.
to it.
But
The scientific community isn't such a cabal that protects its own like a lot of people think it is. The
mm,
scientific community is very open to everything. Like I want to know that people don't become scientists to like protect their opinion. They become scientists to
mm,
discover stuff.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Wait, that makes so much sense. They could have just made like a mold and then pour into that mold as they went up.
It's an interesting little theory, a little hypothesis. I doubt it. And like I
Okay.
said, I think just the way we think it happened is the way we think it happened. The difference from the classical interpretation of like how people built the pyramids is we've learned pretty definitively they weren't slaves. They didn't use slaves.
Oh,
In fact, they used wage workers, right?
okay.
So Egyptians did that for a living. And in fact, they would set up camps, little towns like company towns.
Mm-hmm.
And each town kind of had their own name and had their own like sigil, right? And they were proud of themselves and they felt they worked harder than that other town over there. Screw them. It was almost like team
Oh,
sports, you
okay,
know?
okay, okay.
Yeah. And
Oh, that's
so
a way more positive way of
isn't that like
that.
crazy? We always think it's slaves, but
Yeah.
don't think it was slaves. No,
Okay.
we're pretty sure. We're almost 100% positive. So what you see in these little towns that we've begun to unearth around these pyramids, because it took forever to build them, what we
Mm,
see in these little towns we've begun to unearth, like what is this? Is it a little neighborhood? It's actually a planned town on purpose for workers to do that. And one of the most important things we see, not just the standardization of building, right?
mm-hmm.
Instead of people saying, well, I'm going to build my house like this right here. I'm going to build it's like everything was standard. So it was built by a form of government or another, right? Some institution said, we're making this. But the standardization of bowls, no kidding. So if you have a factory made, and by
Bowls.
factory, it could be just like one guy doing this, but you're making bowl after bowl after bowl exactly the same and putting the same patterns onto it, right? And those patterns were every bowl or
Mm-hmm.
most of the bowls of that size in each town was the same. So that was obviously a wage. You take that bowl to the meal center and they would fill that bowl for you. If you don't have that bowl with that sigil, you don't get fed because you're not a worker. So if you were a worker, you
No.
identified yourself with this
With this
clay,
bowl.
this ceramic bowl.
Oh.
Furthermore, they found different towns, different of these planned towns with different work groups, work gangs, had different sigils. So it was like
Okay.
different teams, right?
Okay.
Go
Okay.
Broncos. Somebody else is going to say go Patriots. Yeah, that's
Okay.
real.
So why did they want to build the pyramid then? Was it like
Oh,
good for them or somehow?
there's you could talk about the beliefs, but it really was just a sense of self, right? It was an
Mm.
inflated sense of self. I'm so important. I come from magic because up in the sky there's magic people and they're looking down on me and I'm part of them. Ha ha ha.
Oh, it's like a
And so
religious
they
thing.
would just yeah. And
Okay.
so they wanted to have the biggest, baddest pyramids. This guy made a pyramid. Oh yeah. And so their burial rituals. Really,
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm,
pyramid
mm-hmm.
is just where you get buried. And so you want your pyramid to be awesome by the time you're buried, to be better than
Oh.
that one over there, or at least be fit for a god. Because the pharaohs, which were the kings, when they died, the belief was when they died, they actually got to go to heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else didn't.
Oh.
And as far as we can tell, and I'm speaking out of turn here, I'm speaking out of class here, but I think they didn't go anywhere. They just were like, you're dead, you're dead. Me, I live forever. Right. As soon
Yeah.
as I'm dead, my spirit goes up and hangs out or whatever. Not you. When you're
Mm-hmm.
dead, you just end. Your existence ends.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was a kind of a polyatheism. It was like, we don't believe in afterlife for you, but definitely afterlife for me. And so that's all it
Oh.
was. Pyramids were mausoleums. Do you know why we have 7 days in a week?
No.
I mean,
Bible?
think about it. What a stupid number.
Okay.
Right? We're going to divide all of time into a certain number of days, and we're going to repeat that.
Okay.
12 would be perfect. You can divide if you had a 12-day week, you could divide it in half. You could divide it in quarters or thirds or sixths, right? It would be perfect. 7?
That makes
That's
sense.
dumb. Why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah.
all ancient peoples looked at the sky, and the
Mhm.
sky was the same stars in the same configuration every single day, night after night after night, generation after generation, and they would just pass over. And every night they get a little
Oh.
higher or a little lower, but it's the same things, except there would be these weird stars that every day would be in a slightly different position. And then today they're here. And then today they're here.
Mhm.
And then today they're here, right? And you're like, what are these weird stars that are moving against the background stars? Every day they're in a different position,
Mhm.
right? The ancient Greek word for wanderer was planet. And so
Oh.
you look up and you see, like literally in the sky, you can actually see
Okay.
Venus, Mercury, Mars, Saturn,
Mhm.
and Jupiter.
Mhm.
So you can see with the naked eye, and they look like stars.
Mhm.
Each one
Mhm.
doesn't look any different than that little pinprick of light that is a star, a billion light years away, right?
Mhm.
Well,
Mhm.
actually, not a billion. It's actually just a couple of light
Okay.
years away. We
Okay.
only see the nearby stars. Anyway, so to these people, they don't know anything, man. They don't know they're on a round rock that's
Mhm.
careening endlessly around a fiery ball. They have no idea, man. And so they're looking around the world, and every night they see this thing, and they see these ones that move, these planets, these wanderers. And
Right.
so they imagine each one as a god, right? So you've got the 5
Oh.
planets you can see at night, plus sun,
Okay.
Sunday, and
Mhm.
the moon, Monday,
Oh,
right?
is Sun
That's
Sunday
why
and
we
Moon
have
Monday?
7 days in a week. Each day is named after a planet.
No.
It's named after a god, and each planet was a
Oh.
god.
Why do you think humans went into astrology? Why did they look at the stars and go like, "Oh, I should study that"?
Was the same reason that some population of creatures just couldn't help themselves from coming out of the water and dying, and then somebody else and dying until one of them made it a little better and a little better and a little better. That's what life does, man. And
Mhm.
we are right now, at least, the pinnacle of what the Earth has made
Mhm.
of a living thing. We've
That's
taken over the
true.
entire Earth. We're
Yeah.
super. We said, oh, birds can fly. I wish we could fly. We invented
Mhm.
airplanes, right?
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
cheetahs can run so fast. I wish we could run that fast. We invented cars. Like
Oh.
that's what we do, man. We are inexorable. We are the
Mhm.
gods of this earth,
Mhm. Mhm.
and we are the caretakers of this earth. Everything we do affects all the other living things. And so, I mean, sooner or later, people are going to ask, like, what even is this up there? Like every night I look up,
Yeah.
and there's this blackness with these little lights. Like, what even is that?
Mhm.
And then every day when the sun comes up, it goes away. Why does it go away? We didn't know why that went away,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we can't help it, man. We're scientists by nature. Humans just can't. If you look at like a chimpanzee, it's a great example.
Mhm.
You know that reed trick I was talking about? Like you got to get the right reed to put it in the termite mound, let the termites grab hold, pull it out, and you got lunch. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They've been using that trick for 1,000,000 years, unchanged, unimproved. Humans don't do that. Humans
Oh.
can't help it. We improve, improve, improve. Look at the section of the book where I talk about the steam engine,
Mhm.
right? And I explain how does a steam engine work? Well, it goes like this and it goes like this. But then we just can't help messing with stuff. So
Mhm.
somebody invents a way to do this. What if you make 2 of them at once and make those 2 do work? What if you make them smaller? What if you use a different fuel? We just
Mm.
can't help it. We have to explore and improve. It's literally part of our nature, of our species. To just sit
Mm.
still doesn't make any sense to us, you know?
Do you think so we were the first creatures that got consciousness and was able to think for ourselves and invent things. And do you think because we were the first ones, we actually stopped other creatures from doing it? So for example, maybe birds could have became as sentient as we are, but because we were first, so we stopped them.
No, I understand that's actually a really, really cool idea
We could have
for a
been bird
story too.
people.
We should, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But no, actually, if that were true, then we would
Mhm.
see what we call coevolution. We would see other species at the time that we were doing it.
Mhm.
Our brains were developing more and more, and we were communicating. That's the important part. We think we're smart individually. We're not.
Mhm.
It's because we communicated for 250,000 years. Our species has learned to share our ideas that we
Mhm.
got smarter and smarter. And
Mm.
we would see that in other species back at that time, at least. If it was true that we got so smart that we stopped other species from getting that smart,
Yeah.
then we would see evidence of that in the fossil record, that other species were doing it, but then didn't. Maybe it would be a mystery. Oh, they were getting smart, but they stopped. We just didn't see that.
Oh.
Yeah.
And do
And
you know, just out of curiosity, they said they found this fossil that was like 3 billion years old. How do they know it was 3 billion years old?
Oh, that's a great question, man.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's go back to our particles,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there is, and I'm just going to do carbon dating and just
Okay.
an overview because this isn't my expertise. I really don't understand all of it, but you can take a carbon atom out of anything. We know that certain atoms actually change over time. We call it decay. literally change over time. So if you get all of the carbon atoms, you can get a tiny, teeny sample and still have millions, maybe billions of carbon atoms. Like it doesn't take much because they're so small. And look at in aggregate, how many of them have these characteristics? How many of them have these characteristics? Now, from that, you can determine how long ago that population was created. Right? Take this and put it here and put it here and put it here, and that starts a clock. And you really have to kind of get into a little bit of quantum physics as far as like subatomic particles. And yeah, there's actually ways to do that. They look at, carbon 12 and see how much of that carbon is carbon 12 or carbon 14, which is to say how many neutrons it has in it. And given the population, the statistics of that population of carbon atoms and the percentage of these characteristics, you can tell how long ago this process happened.
Oh,
That's a real thing.
wow.
And they do it with other elements too, but carbon dating is the only one I really studied and then forgot.
Okay.
But
Carbon dating.
we call it radiocarbon dating. And that's good for, and that's not good for that old stuff. I think radiocarbon dating is good for like 5 to 50,000 years. We can get a real accurate estimation of like how long ago this pottery was made or something using radiocarbon dating. But if you go past 50,000 years, it becomes inaccurate and you have to use a different way. But yeah, there's actual ways to do it. We're not taking guesses. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's very cool. And I remember you also mentioned that you studied meteorology. Does that connect at all to what you studied?
Not really. Meteorology doesn't really overlap much with the history of the Earth and the history of life on Earth, except climatology does. There is a wonderful book by Stephen Mithin called After the Ice. Now, what he does is he uses this, and I drew a little inspiration from this. He uses a character named Lubbock. To go through, named after a famous anthropologist, I want to say, to basically explore what was life like when the world was frozen and humans still existed. Right?
Oh, so what was it like?
So he's talking about the last ice age, and it really was mastodon, or what do you call? I keep saying mastodon, and I mean mammoth. Mammoth tusks upended like this with mammoth hides drawn over them to make huts in the snow, right? With little fires inside those huts. People dressed in furs, and they literally lived in the snow. Like that was their communities. Nothing. They would wrap stuff around their feet, right? Not shoes specifically with like a sole and everything, but they wrapped stuff around their feet and they would kind of layer stuff underneath to give them a bit of a sole, And yeah, that was a real thing. And so that was wonderful. But I didn't include, and it took me a long time to figure out, I'm like, okay, do I want to talk about? I spent more than a year figuring out whether I wanted to talk about the Ice Age, because the last Ice Age, in fact, when the last Ice Age is very, very important, obviously, for all life on Earth, right? It lasted a long time. And about 13,000 years ago or so, it ended. And so the average temperature of the surface of the Earth began to rise to what we call comfortable now. But it wasn't then, man. It was cold. And so when that ended, that's when you see, the moment that ended in geological time, you see agriculture, you see civilizations. And all like humans were waiting, man. It was like, I mean, literally, we weren't like, oh, I can't wait for this ice to end. That was just life. Obviously, the world was like that, and you lived. It was fine.
They didn't know if it would end.
Over hundreds of years, it starts warming up, and where there's always ice, now suddenly things are growing. You're like, what's this dirt here, And slowly but surely, it began to thaw out, and humans couldn't wait. Boom. They became so advanced, civilized. They took all of this learning that they had been giving each other over and over and over for centuries and started putting it places and creating walls, a low wall to block wind.
Walls. Yes, wind.
No, you wouldn't know like how important that could possibly be, but it really is one of the most important things. Low mound walls. That's one of the beginning pieces of civilization. And then, we built roofs to keep the rain off, and and a needle that pulls thread. One of the things that you'd never think was important. One of the most important inventions of the last 15,000 years. A needle that pulls thread. Yeah. And so, we started just inventing everything, man.
So the Ice Age ended just 13,000 years ago. That's not that long ago. That's
around
so not that long ago compared to
I know, right?
the time frame that we've been talking about. Yeah.
have been around for a million years or so, and humans I talk about have been around for about 250,000 years. That's when we started actually talking using language, about
And
a quarter of a million years ago.
how long was the ice age? Do you know?
Ooh, no, I don't know.
Okay,
It was
but a
thousands of
long time,
years.
thousands of
Yeah.
years. The whole world was just covered in ice and snow.
Well, not the whole world, but if you look at the ice caps now, right at the northernmost and southernmost part of the Earth, that's all ice. It's too frozen to like live there or anything. Well,
Mm-hmm.
imagine those ice caps coming down
Mm-hmm.
over Europe,
Mm-hmm.
right down almost to the tropics in some places. So everything is really, really cold. The
Mm-hmm.
tropics didn't. So there was a lot of really good, healthy populations in the tropics. It was still cold for like what it is now, where you and I live in the tropics. But
Mm-hmm.
hold on, how long did the last ice age last? See, this takes away all people's excuses for not knowing stuff. It's okay you
Yeah,
don't know it, but you can always find out.
that's
So
true.
yeah,
That's
that's
true.
honestly, yeah.
I'm not gonna show the part where you ask. I'm just gonna show the part where you give the answer. No.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
uh anyway, what else you got?
No, but so you mean during the ice age, actually, some people did live in tropical weather, so it
Uh,
wasn't like the whole.
well, when we say tropical,
Mm-hmm.
okay, literally tropical doesn't we can use it to describe weather or climate, but okay, the earth is going around the sun, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
sun's here and the
Yeah,
earth is
sun.
going around it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the earth is its axis, it's spinning on its axis, right? But it's actually tilted 23.6 degrees. So it's tilted a little bit. So sometimes the top half is pointed toward the sun. Sometimes the bottom half is pointed toward the sun. It's where we get a summer and winter, right? That's why southern
Oh,
winter is different than, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
But then what happens around the equator is because this is 23.6 degrees, right? So it's pointing, or it's just 26. No, it can't be that much. So if you go from the equator north
Mm-hmm.
23.6 degrees, that's a tropic,
Mm-hmm.
because as the earth turns, you're still pointed right at it.
Mm-hmm.
You go 20, that's the Tropic of Cancer. You go south 23.6 degrees from the equator all the way around, that's the Tropic of Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
And so as the earth is turned like this and going around, the equator doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
That little band of tropics, the two tropics, the North Tropic and South Tropic, still getting all the sun. That's why you and I, we haven't seen a winter in how long? I've been here for 3 years. I haven't seen winter.
Yeah. Oh, so that's why we get like different climates in different parts of the
In
world.
northern latitudes or mid latitudes, yeah, you get all your seasons, man. Summer, winter, fall, spring. But in the tropics, and that's literally what the word the tropics means, is you're in that band of even though the earth is tilted, you're still facing. It's fine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Yes. So it's kind of crazy to think how we came from all that to now having, like in your book where you discuss having a best friend and then having that kind of human connection. And then
Mhm.
ultimately, the conclusion, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just like the way how we all came together to actually form what we are today. And then you have that mic drop at the end.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah,
don't don't spoil the ending.
I will say
That's,
that.
and I know it's not poetry or anything, but that's one of my favorite paragraphs I've ever written, I think, in my life. Not one of the best, but one of my favorites. And I just reread actually the book last night. I haven't read it in like a year
Uh-huh.
because I lived it for 5 years. But yeah, and so I just
Uh-huh.
reread it last night, and
Mm-hmm.
I almost choked myself up on that last
Yeah,
paragraph again. I
that
don't know
was
why.
really good.
I feel deeply about these things. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. When I read that last page, I was like, "Oh, good one, Kev.
I
Very good
know,
one,
right? It's that
actually."
little
Yeah.
got it.
So
Yes.
I won't leave that part in. They'll have to read it themselves. I'm gonna leave
That's all right.
a
Yeah.
link to the book in below. I'm gonna leave a link to the book. And so billions of years, and then now we have AI. But interestingly enough, you wrote this book without AI.
Yeah. No, I don't even know how to use AI. I should learn.
So how does that work? How do you write a book without AI? Are you just in front of your computer typing all day?
If I can make a confession, I was in front of my phone most of the time on that.
Wow,
So
so just on
I
your phone?
yeah, I tend to write in spurts,
Okay,
right?
of course. Of
I
course.
I get manic sometimes, and actually the very last 10 pages all came out in 2 weeks. While I
No.
was here, actually, I finished the book here in Thailand, and
Okay.
I was just every single morning I'd wake up in the morning, look at my schedule, and say, okay, I have an hour till my first class, and I
Okay.
put my computer standing right up against a big glass set of doors,
Mm-hmm.
the the window doors we use here in the tropics, and just looked out and just banged away, bang, 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 bang. And I spent like 2 weeks just vomiting the end of this. And so it came out in spurts. And sometimes I just would literally be driving and go, and I would pull out my phone and just write a note. And I had this one document that actually had links to other documents that were different, like essays and ideas and everything.
Okay.
But I had this one document that was just sort of being built from different pieces, and I kept taking it out. And so that's, most of it I did on my phone.
That's more than what most people can really say that they've ever done, right,
Yeah.
in their lives. So will you be writing another book again soon? Okay.
But one of them is something like this book, only I wanted to take on cognition. How does your brain work? I mean, isn't it weird that like your brain never, ever, ever stops firing? It uses electricity and molecules, right? And so there's electricity coursing through your brain right now. It's crackling off. Chicka, chicka, chicka. And from the moment you're born to the moment you die, you could live to be 130 years old. And every single second of your entire life, you're going to be doing that. It's weird. Your brain never turns off, ever. And it never stops moving.
Yeah.
It's creepy to think like behind your eyes, that gray matter is literally moving. It's very slowly shifting to make different neural networks. Anyway, and so I thought I'd do something about that. On the blunt end of it, I would say, what is the brain? How does it work? Where does it come from? And then on the sharp end of it, I want to sort of address cognitive biases, things like pareidolia. When you look at a cloud, right, and you see a dragon or a flower or a face or a pirate ship, no other animal in the world sees anything. They look at a cloud and they see a cloud, literally.
Okay.
Not dogs, not nobody. Humans have this thing, man, and that's called pareidolia. And in fact, that is visual pareidolia. Pareidolia is when you look at a piece of toast and you see the face of Jesus, right? That's just a piece of toast, man.
Okay.
But we see patterns. We love to see patterns. Look at the night sky. It is the perfect example of literally a random distribution of stars. There is no pattern up there at all, but we see stuff, right? We see, if you go south, you see a whale. We see Orion. We see shapes in that random pattern. We can't help that. Our brain does that. So that's one of our cognitive biases. There's a lot of them. And so I thought on the sharp end of this project, what I could do is sort of bring everybody and understand how it all works, and then bring it to, now this is how it affects your life. This is how this became who you are. I like pizza and long walks on the beach, right? Why is that? It's because of this. But I can't find a way to make it fun and interesting like I did with Fish in a Spacesuit. Once I find that key to unlock it, I think I'll really jump on it.
It takes time, but I feel like you'll be able, if anyone's gonna be able to do it, I think you'll be able to do it. Because you did take like a very complex topic and condense it down to 42 pages. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really great work. And also, one more thing, you know what my favorite part about this book is despite like other than all the evolution stuff, I think when you talk about, and I mentioned this before, when you mention energy profit, can you expand a little bit about what you mean by energy profit? Because I feel like without that, we would not be here today.
Yes, energy profit is. So it takes energy to do anything, and it takes energy to have kids. Remember what I was talking about?
Yes.
To be biologically successful, you have to have children. And technically, in evolutionary biology, you have to have kids that have kids. That makes you evolutionarily successful. So you've passed on your particular pattern, right?
Okay. Right.
So what does it take to do that? Well, what if you stopped eating? You're like, I don't have time to eat anymore. I'm just not going to do it anymore. You would die.
Yeah.
You have to eat. Why? Because that's energy. Right?
Okay.
The sun makes the plants. The plants have stored chemical energy. The cow eats the plant. We eat the cow, right? So that's actual energy we're putting into our body, and that allows our cellular processes from our brain to our heart to our lungs, everything, right? And so throughout all of evolution, throughout all of life, all over Earth forever, there has been this accounting game, which is what I call it in the book, an accounting game. So if it takes this much energy every day to live, you want to have at least this much energy. And if you can have this much energy, right, over time, then you can have enough, you can eat enough and rest enough and have enough to have kids. And if you can make a baby, then that's another thing that has this energy requirement, and it's got
Oh,
to have
that's
some energy.
true.
And if
Yes.
during its life it can have this much energy, then it can have a baby too, grow up
Okay.
and have a baby too, and pass
Yeah.
on their lineage. So all of life, ever since the single-celled organisms to complex organisms, fish in the sea, to reptiles and dinosaurs and birds, to right now you and me, we have this accounting game. So you have to have this much energy in your life to pass on your genes. If you don't, you die.
Okay.
So anytime you see a population or even a single person, anybody who's literally starving to death, that is not a problem of the species. We solved that so long ago. That is a problem of economics and politics. That's an easily solvable problem. Nobody should ever starve anymore. And yet people still do. And that's just because we haven't quite reached that point where all of us can get along yet. You know? Like, man, I love you guys, not you. Right? Doing that. I don't know why. But yeah,
fuck this guy.
Right. You're awesome. I love you. You can go. I don't like you. Have you ever seen Soylent Green? It's an old movie, Charlton Heston, science fiction. It was based off of a Harry Harrison novella, I want to say, called Make Room, Make Room. And it's basically it's like future overpopulation. There's so much population, so many humans, we can't feed them all now. And so it's a cool little story.
Okay.
That, yeah.
But we would never have too much people that we couldn't feed, right? Do you think?
Honestly, I know. No, and we don't get me wrong. I'm probably going to write some fun stories about that, but
please
chances
do.
are, no, man, we're so smart. We're never going to get to that point where people starve by necessity. In fact, people are starving by socioeconomics right now. Right? It's all about the societies and the economy. There's plenty of food. It just doesn't all go to Ethiopia, or sometimes not enough of it goes there, right? And sometimes there's people there who are, making the choices to not feed, And so, the starvation is we could solve that as a species, but our whole species doesn't get along. We just have this group and that group and this group and that group and this group. And if we all got along, then obviously a lot of these problems, the total food production of the world could easily feed the total population of the world. And I don't use the word easily lightly. I mean, it could easily feed everyone in the world. Absolutely. We make enough food for everybody, for sure. It just doesn't get to everybody.
Okay. And so how do you solve that?
Oh man, that is politics. And nobody likes the word politics, but it's been around. That human endeavor has been around forever.
Okay. Yes.
It's a way to organize human endeavor. I want to, build cars, but I don't have enough steel. I have an iron mine, and I have a refinery. Well, let's figure something out here. You just coordinate this and this and this, and it takes politics, whether it's a king or a duke or an elected official, a congressman or a parliamentarian or a president or a prime minister. Those are actually jobs. They're not just famous people who are just famous for being famous. They literally have jobs to do, and that's coordinating human effort. That's all.
Actually, that makes sense. You actually also talk about that in the book, and we've done it very successfully for a very long time. Actually, clearly, right. We're evidence that it's worked, right? Me and you being here right now, talking to each other, that's evidence that it's worked. Where do you see us going after this in terms of evolutionary wise?
That's funny, because that's a perfectly natural question, and I expected that question. And so evolutionary wise, I couldn't tell you.
Or
but I can
however wise that you think.
Yes, I can tell you what humans will inevitably do. We can't help it. We are going to leave this planet and explore other places. We're going to find other places in the universe, whether they be dark, dense, or empty spaces, whether they're vibrant, wonderful planets, whether they're asteroids that we build little things on. We're going. It's impossible for us to just we're not going to spend our entire existence in the universe here, obviously. Otherwise, if that was in our nature, the life of Earth doesn't do that. If that was in our nature, we would have stayed single cell. We would have stayed in the oceans. But we didn't. We just kept going and bigger and bigger and more complex. And that's the next frontier. That's the last one. We go up. We just sent a wonderful team of astronauts to the moon, right? They circled the moon, got some pictures we've never seen before, and then came back. And that is in preparation for another mission in 2028. NASA's going to send a mission of astronauts to go back to actually literally land on the moon and walk around on the moon. Which we did back in 1968, 1969.
Yeah.
We can't help ourselves. And these time spans seem so long, we've been playing around with going to the moon for actually, in the scope of human history, it's been a blip. And don't worry, that's what we're doing. We're going to do the moon. We're going to do Mars. Venus is uninhabitable. The surface of Venus can melt lead. My perspective is all of human history. I'm looking at it all, and to me, it's obvious. Like, oh, do you think we'll ever, go to space? And yeah, yes, obviously, yeah. It's just like looking back on those creatures in the ocean and saying, do you think they'll ever come out onto land? Well, looking back, obviously they did, and that's the way I see space exploration. That's going to become the next sort of chapter in the human diaspora as humans spread. Yeah, like a disease.
Since you're a little bit of an educator yourself and a creative, based on this book, what's that one thing that you want people to remember in their daily life, knowing how short life is?
To don't be too lazy to do it. If there's a reason not to do it, like there's sharks in there, hey man, that's fine. Don't do that. Don't do that, right?
Okay.
Like I could die jumping off there. That's good. That's a good, don't do it. But when you go, I'm just not in the mood, which in my 50s hits me all the time. And I don't always take this advice. But my advice would be, do it. It's not going to last forever. None of this lasts forever. So if you go, man, that sounds like fun, but I'm not in the mood. Get in the mood. Drink a Red Bull. Go do it. Yeah, whatever it is.
Okay, that's so cool. That's great advice. Well, thank you very much for your time today, Kevin. It's been a pleasure having you, author of Fish in a Spacesuit. Go get this book, link in the description below. Thank you very much, Kevin. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. So, hey, what are you going to do now?
But the next time I see you, bring the book, and I'll
Oh yeah. Oh no, for sure. I'm definitely bringing the book next time. 100%.
Okay, cool. And I just want to sign it for you because it's the only copy I've ever given anybody where I didn't sign and put something in there.
Bah! Well, that can't be right.
Sorry. All right.
I'll definitely hold you up to that. All right. Thanks, Kevin. See ya.
Yep. Bye.
Have a good day. Halleck
that was my son. Yep.
So cool.
So the cover art, actually, the fish in the spacesuit, I told him, I said, look, I need a picture of a fish in a spacesuit. He's like, okay, no problem. But do you mean like a human type of spacesuit with a fish floating in it? Or do you mean like a fish wearing a fish-shaped spacesuit? And I was like, it's up to you, man. He actually did both. I have another copy of like one. There's this one picture he did where it's a fish in a fish-shaped spacesuit, right? And so there's a bubble over the little fish head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Very creative. Very creative. Hey, you know what? If you didn't take 5 years, he might not have been able to draw it as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Everything happens for a reason.
For sure.
Yeah.